First of all, I would like to thank you for the participation, and in addition, and especially for really the wishing to join this meeting, as well as to collaborate in providing your presentation. And so this is a very good sign of how the SNSJU community is working and willing really to obtain results. This workshop has been promoted by TrialsNet. That is a StreamD project. And the idea is really to start a link between the StreamB and StreamD project about KPIs and KVIs. So this is just a short introduction to the agenda. We will basically have this welcome speech that I will try to be quite quick on that. We will have a session 1 that will be related to the StreamD projects, TrialsNet, FIDAL, TargetX, Imagine Beyond 5G. We will have a short coffee break, and then we will jump into the session number 2 dedicated to the StreamB project. So we will have ExaX2, Origami, Privateer, Deterministic 6G, Safe 6G, 6G Tandem, and Predict 6G. The only point, let's say, question mark is related to the speaker, to the 6G Tandem. So if someone from the project is here, just raise the hand, and so we know that we can count on you.
Alex, I think we still see your initial slide, so I don't know if you meant to present the agenda.
Yes, that's right. I actually moving the slides, so I don't know why. Okay, the usual issues are happening here. So I try to share again the whole screen, so this should be better. Sorry for the inconvenience. You see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
And now you see also the agenda?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now it should be session 2. And so I was asking if there is some representative from 6G Tandem.
Hi, this is Barbara. I'm here. I need to check with my technical lead. She said that she or a colleague of hers would be presenting. But yeah, I will check again with them.
No problem. Thank you very much. And then we will have a session number 3 that is going to, let's say, be an open session in which we should exchange views, questions, possibly answer, and especially start to think how we can further collaborate and progress on this quite important topic. In this slide, just the rationale and the motivation. So I would say that one of the expected outcomes from the StreamD project, as was reported exactly in the call, was to provide input towards especially StreamB project that are the one that focusing on technology of 6G. So mainly in terms of new requirements is StreamD project will run large-scale trials, so we'll be able to collect quite a lot of data. That would be useful to StreamB to understand how the technology that are used and investigated from their side can help in really reaching let's say the requirement of the target value from the StreamD projects. So we are almost for the phase 1 project, 1 year and a half working activity, and so this means that almost all the projects, StreamD projects, should be in the position to provide first results. And this could be useful for the StreamB phase 1 project to, steer them or further refine their activity based on these results and make some analysis. Or even more better to provide input towards the StreamB phase 2 project that has just started. Of course, KPIs is not the only piece of the puzzle here towards 6G. We know very well that we have the KVI term that is quite new and interesting to be investigated. So I think that this occasion will be quite interesting also to exchange view on how the different projects are facing this topic. So the workshop goals is essentially to provide benefits for both Stream D and Stream B projects. Especially from the Stream B side, it is important, of course, to have feedbacks from the requirements and how this can be improved thanks to the technologies, and also having a broader view about the key values, since having large-scale trial will be really helpful to collect quite a lot of this information. On the other side, for Stream D, of course, comply the goal with the call. That was the one that I showcased before. And understand if there are actually some technologies that are studied by the Stream B that can be really helpful to help them. Of course, this is a very added value also for the SNSU community overall, because I would say that this workshop could be really considered as a starting point to create the opportunities for cross-collaboration, synergies, as well as contribute to the activities for especially for the TMV working group here. So I think that with this short introduction, I can already start to present, according to the agenda, the presentation from TrialsNet. I will be the moderator for the session number 1, and of course, I'm going to start with the presentation from TrialsNet side. After that, I think that I can be silent for a while. So thanks for be patient. Okay, I will try to stay in the 20 minutes loss. This presentation will be exactly divided into parts. One on the KPIs and one on the KVIs. Here you can find all the names of the people that contributed to this presentation. So the main objective of the TrialsNet is really to deploy full large-scale trials, focusing on 6G application, because we don't have yet the 6G technology, but we are pushing over the application layer towards the implementation of 13 innovative use cases based on several technologies, metaverse, massive IoT, and whatever, I mean. And this 13 use cases will be trialed over 4 clusters that you see here: Spain, Italy, Greece, and Romania. And we run over network solutions that will be and are currently being deployed by the project itself based on advanced functionalities. So the point will be also to trial functionalities on the network side and on different network architecture. The final goal will be to collect KPIs and KVIs, analyze them, and see the gaps that should be covered by the new technology. At the same time, it will be also important to understand which could be the acceptability from the people about these new type of applications. Of course, the objective and the results of the project will be further strengthened thanks to the open call that we have inside our activities. TrialsNet use cases. So as I mentioned, we have 13 use cases. These use cases are divided in these 3 domains: infrastructure, transportation, safety and security, youth and emergency, and culture, tourism and entertainment. I will go quite quickly also on this slide. This is the methodology that we are using for our activities. So we started from the use case definition that in some cases already involved the users. We developed and deployed network solution and application, ran the trials, collecting qualitative and quantitative results, evaluate the results, and optimize both application, network, etc., to comply with the initial requirements. So ideally, this cycle should be performed several times. And at this point in time, we have already finished our first round with the preliminary test results of the different use cases. So the idea is then go to the next phase. That will be exactly the trial phase in the second part of the project. Let's focus now more on the KPIs. So how we worked for the, let's say, for this aspect. First of all, it was quite fundamental to define a common terminology that can be used by all the use cases in terms of speaking the same language. We have different actors involved in our activities, and everyone had his initial idea about what could be the requirements. Also, even just in terms of naming. That was quite important, really, to define this common terminology that was based on SC3GPP and 5GPP documentation. We have defined this new common terminology in the context of our delivery of 6.1, but of course we are definitely open to even extend this terminology or this taxonomy, thanks to the activity also from the TMW working group. Therefore, I mean, it is. I think it's quite an important point to be taken into consideration. I will go through quite quickly on use case by use case, just showing, I mean, that we have already performed several measurements, of course, not in the final configuration of the use case of the application, not exactly in the same network infrastructure. Some activities have been performed in laboratory, some others already have been performed in on field, on a commercial network, and we have identified here the relevance for each KPIs. I think that there is no time, of course, to go in such a details, but it's important really to collect all the information. I would say that the KPIs are not only related, of course, to the performance of the network, but also from the, for example, we have some use cases in which we have compute KPIs such as precision, recall, for what concern artificial intelligence algorithms, for example. So again, we make this work that I think we should be used as a basis for the next steps. And I will go through the conclusion about the KPIs in this last slides. What I can anticipate, we identify that in general, the uplink throughput is something that is really putting some bottlenecks to some application. We are talking about application that use camera feeds, camera video over the uplink. We are talking about use case in which we are using LiDARs, for example, in the safety and security. Use cases related to prosthetic device, and yes, what we identify that there should be some work or anyway something that could help really to have better performances over the uplink. While I'm speaking, I'm just going through the slides of the different use cases and the preliminary results that we obtained with respect to the target range. Another point, especially for this kind of use cases that we have about metaverse and I mean real-time interaction between users, of course, latency is going to be again a key point. From this perspective, it should be also considered that latency depends also, of course, on the application level. So it's not just a question of the connectivity or I mean, the radio access technology underlying. So also the application should be optimized in that sense. I will leave now the floor to my colleague Hassan from Real Wireless that will go more in detail about the KVIs part of our activities.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, all. This is Hassan from Real Wireless. I just share video. Okay. So thank you for joining this webinar. I'm just going to give an introduction about what you are doing in terms of key value and key value indicator in TrialsNet, as my colleague Alex mentioned before. So the terminology value has existed for many years, probably decades. However, value and 6G technology is something new, as Alex mentioned before. So probably 2 or 3 years before, we never on the technology side, we really didn't deal with something called key value or key value indicator. So this is something new. So if you look at this wheel, we can find that there are many values that we could focus at, and this value could be driven by the technology or this value could drive the technology. So there is a relationship between value and technology. And again, those value could be social, environmental, economical, or again, depends on the technology as well. These are example of 130 value or over 130 value. There might be many, many other values that we could add or we could analyze. Next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. So one methodology that we are following in TrialsNet was introduced by 6GIA, where we define the value that we are interested in, and there are linked to the use case in the project. We have approximately 12 use cases in the project, as shown before by Alex. So some use case may generate value or may have effect on values. So we start with defining what value we are interested in those use cases. Then the second question is how we measure those value, or what we call key value indicator. And then we focus on the enablers of those value. What would enable those values? For example, lower latency, better connection, or reliability in the technology, and so on. And then we could look at the KPI related to those value or technical impact of those value. For example, coverage or capacity. Next slide, please. So many of those values that we are analyzing in TrialsNet project are basically originated from the SDG, from Sustainability Development Goals. So, for example, trustworthiness, digital inclusion, societal sustainability, and so on. Those values, some use cases are really important. Those values are really important for some use cases and probably less important for other use cases. So we have a huge table in the project where for each use case we may have many values, 3, 4, or 10 values that are important to that use case or linked to that use case. What we are showing here on the screen is just example of some key value that we are dealing with in the project. Next slide, please, Alex. So just to give an example of a sense of what how KPI, that terminology that we have been dealing with in 3G, 4G, and 5G in the wireless technology over the last 30 years, how we can link KPI to quality of experience and then to key value indicator or key value. So on the left-hand side, we have an example where the key value is, for example, environmental sustainability. How we measure that key value, what we call key value indicator, is by, for example, CO2 reduction. This is just an example. There might be other way of key value indicator that depends on that are related to environmental sustainability. Now, what is the related KPI to this key value indicator is, for example, lower energy consumption. Again, we might have another KPI related to this KVI. And in terms of quality of experience, we would like to reduce the CO2 emission by having the same quality of experience perceived by the end user. Now, we have other, apart from this example and simple example, this can get very complicated when we deal with other key value and key value indicator, and sometimes it's very, very challenging to measure key value or to assess key value indicator. So we have other methodology that we are currently dealing with in the project, for example, the questionnaire, or another methodology where we combine several key value into one targeted key value, again, through questionnaire. Sometimes it's very difficult to go out and for some key value to go out and get this result, get the answer for a certain key value. Then we need through the questionnaire to get to be able to divide this key value into several other basically key values, simpler for the end user to understand and to be able to respond to a questionnaire. So this is something that we're working on in the project, and we are still dealing with. Next slide, please. So another aspect that we are dealing with in the project is the aspect of technology, business and funding models, and value. And part of the analysis that we are doing is to understand the link of technology, business, and value, and how these are related to each other. So sometimes technology is driven by the business model. So we have a business model that's clear and clear objective. Then we go and develop the technology. And sometimes there is, for example, a need for a certain value, and then we go and we develop the technology to answer that value. And again, the technology is related to the business side, so we can start sometime from an idea and the technology, and we think about how to generate business or funding models from it. Funding models can be, business is mainly private sector business, and funding models could be, for example, a public funding model, and these are mainly related to the societal aspect. So technology, value, and business model are three terms which are really important and are related to each other. Next slide, please. So another part of the analysis that we are doing in TrialsNet is basically categorization of value. That's one part of the analysis that we are doing. So some value are really related to the economy, have economic aspect. Economy is a value anyway. It is a value. Again, environmental aspect. Some value may have some environmental aspect, and some value may not be economical or environmental, but there might be depend on the society, as we have seen before. So, for example, digital inclusion and so on. So we are categorizing the key value in TrialsNet project. I think that's all from my side, Alex.
Yes, you are right. Actually, there is still already this slide. That thank you, first of all, Hassan. We are quite in time, so that's perfect.
Thank you.
As I was mentioning before, we started with preliminary measurements, so technical measurements, but we took also the occasion, at least for this use case, really to involve the users ready for gaining their feedback from the experience. Again, what is important is that we are targeting KPIs and KVIs. These are two aspects that are some way separated, but we should link them together. Anyway, for example, for this use case 10, we started just to understand which can be the feedback of the user of the usage of the application. So they exactly tried this application about the immersive fun experience. So they basically were attending a basketball match through VR headset, through pre-recorded feeds, using Wi-Fi technology. So here the idea was really just focus on the KVI related to the application itself. Of course, this application will be enabled by beyond 5G technology in a real scenario when we are going to trial. And here we have just a first example of the results that we have obtained. As I was mentioning before, users for some use cases will be not just included in our activity at the end, but for some use cases we already engaged the users since the beginning in order to design properly some application, and I'm especially referring for the one for the culture, tourism, and entertainment domain. Of course, it's not possible to go in all the details here during this short time slot, so I would suggest really to go through our deliverables. So, as a conclusion and next steps, preliminary measurement activity has been performed, as you have seen from the different tables there. Of course, depending on the maturity of the different use case of the technology, the networks, because we started with commercial network, laboratory network, we are deploying network from the scratch, for example, in Pisa for the health use cases. So we are really covering a wide range of possibilities from both the network side as well as application. As I was anticipating from the KPI side, it seems that uplink need to be really enhanced some way, because there are some use cases that are really impacted by the current performances of 5G. In the second phase of the project, we will focus then on our trial that will include, in addition to our 13 core use case, 24 new use cases that we onboarded through the open call. And this huge activity will definitely help us to collect KPIs and KVIs in the most complete way. The data will be therefore analyzed and evaluated. So on the other side, we'll be able to exactly find the potential limitation of the current technologies. So deriving some requirements towards 6G. But at the same time, on the application side, on the value side, we'll be able to understand and help the early acceptance of these new technology and services. Okay, I think that we stayed quite in time with that, so maybe it's the right time to go to the next presenter that
Alex, just a question.
Yes.
You take question live or later?
We will try to take them in the last session if it's possible, because otherwise we will not stick in the time schedule as you.
Understood. I have to leave, in a few minutes, so I will send by chat. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, that could be an idea. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thanks.
Thank you. So exactly as Didier was suggesting, maybe we can collect any question in the chat, and we can of course address them after the workshop. This will be also a very, very good way to progress. So the next should be Katrina from FIDAL. So the floor is yours. Katrina is present. I see the presentation, but I don't hear you. I don't know if it's my issue.
It's because I forgot to unmute. I was talking
that's
to myself.
perfect.
My apologies. So
that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. And if there's any connectivity issues, I have two initial apologies. One is we're on the move and I'm in a hotel, and therefore I can't guarantee the connectivity. If it gets bad, I'll turn my video off. And the other is we just came out of our plenary, so all of our technical partners that actually engage with the KPIs are currently on planes right now and unable to attend. So while I have our list of KPIs, I will not be able to speak to them. I'm Katrina Petersen. I'm with Public Safety Communication Europe, and I'm actually the person who engages with the KVIs on the process. So I will go into depth into that process and the methodology and help further that conversation. All right, so can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
And if I go into full presenter mode, let's see. If I change, can you see it? I'm worried about the same problem.
Yes. You got it, yeah.
All right, fabulous. All right, so FIDAL is a project quite similar in some respects to TrialsNet. We have a set of internal use cases. We are actually covering 2 domains, and we also have a set of open calls. So we'll have an additional around 25 open calls coming in as well. So our objective is to support basically beyond 5G experimentation and field trials, and trying to develop prototype and experimental environments for rapid prototyping and validation of these forward-looking technologies. We have a very particular strong focus on network applications within this project, so understanding what it means to apply what basically the user might experience and have their hands on with into one of these infrastructures, and to understand what it means to have open accessible infrastructures, as well as what it means to make these network applications work over 5G and how 5G benefits them. So we have, like I said, we cover 2 different domains. We do public safety and media, and we have a diversity of use cases, from basically the ability for semi-professional content making for sports material, to bands being able to play virtually together from different locations, to a haptic sensing vest for police school training, to digital twins for first responders, firefighters in the field in rural areas. And this has created a very interesting challenge, both for defining the targets for the KPIs that are realistic, as well as for trying to find comparable and repeatable KPIs. So very quickly, I'll show we have KPIs. They're divided into 2. We have the PPDR service KPIs and the media service KPIs. And within these, we also have core network service KPIs. I will stop speaking here because I am not the KPI expert. I can say that the challenges that they're having around the KPIs, because we have completed our dry run tests as well as the lab test validations, are near completed across the use cases. And with these, we've had very similar problems to what Alex was just talking about. Basically upload latency. There's some key issues around this that are creating some bottlenecks as well. I think that was the term you used, and that's a term that's been spoken around as well. So there's definitely potentially some good exchange that could happen there. And so now I'm going to move us on to the KVIs. So the way FIDAL has been treating the KVIs is, I don't know what happened to that title, is thinking about them as a way to look past performance to value. So if, say, for a public safety case, performance, one of the things that we're looking at is increased speed of data. For KVIs, we're trying to figure out how do we know in the activities that we're doing that we're pointing towards the values of things like improved firefighting, saved lives, saved environments, or decreased vulnerabilities. And a similar relationship can be said for the media. So if one of the performance things we're trying to do is increase augmented reality connectivity, that values then we're looking for is how do we then know that we're pointing towards improved access to cultural events and community building. So we've done this through a basic methodology. This methodology is derived from a mix of work like the previous white paper from 5G PPP on KVIs, as well as other work on developing value-based indicators within the public sector, trying to understand what it means to actually develop a good indicator. How do you know you have a good indicator? And what do you take into account as you develop it? So for us, it's been to start with thinking through the use cases and their stakeholders and articulating their challenges and needs. So understanding the context of use, as well as understanding the high level values at play through thinking about the European pillar of social rights, the SDGs, and trying to understand how these two meet together. This was a really important step for us because values themselves are great, but their abstractions and what it means to apply them as principles is quite diverse and extraordinarily contested. And also the use cases themselves create really great context, but they can't always tell us the why and the wherefore. So putting them together, we're then able to try to identify the sort of the key values and to prioritize the key values for the projects. Sticking within the use case, we then try to assess the scale and scope of these values in relationship to the use case goals, trying to take these values and bring them down to something concrete and actionable. And then we looked similarly to TrialsNet, trying to understand what are the enablers of the KVIs within the projects, maybe what are the blockers to reaching these key values. And then from there, we started to propose key value indicators and trying to understand how they related to project timing. And then from there, we're trying to figure out how do we measure these? How do we know we've actually started to point towards these indicators, and how do we then evaluate them, and who should be involved in that evaluation process? So we created an initial structure for understanding what these values mean. So we need to understand the values for who and what context and what's at stake in that value. We would do this as a project process to try to really be transparent to ourselves and have clear understanding and shared meaning in what these values mean, knowing they're contested. Then we brought those down to a more goals objective level within that value. What are we trying to do in that value? Trying to get it, while still high level, trying to bring it down to something a bit more tangible. And then from there, we started to identify indicators. So what's the purpose? How does that fit within the requirements? And then specifically, what data can we get that evidences this? So we have our key value indicators. This is just a subset of our indicators. We're working with about 25 as a whole total right now. But we have ones that go across all the use cases, as well as ones that are domain specific. So the ones that go across all the use cases, for example, are thinking about what does it mean to support inclusive commercial benefit. So this is something that everybody's trying to do. How do we support inclusive benefit, building new market spaces? Within an objective within that, what's a piece of this puzzle that we could maybe achieve? We said, well, we can think about the cost and time to engage with services. And then within that, we think about, well, what do we have that we could look at around those? And one of the things that we could do was look at the reduction in time taken and the reduction in resources engaged in the use cases. Another one, for example, is reducing the footprint on energy. And there we think about the reduced energy use in how we're configuring the use cases, so trying to narrow down this. And we realize what we need to do is think about the use of that in terms of impact. So not just can we make a device function with less energy, but can we make it function and how the stakeholders need to use it, and how does that affect the impact? How does the stakeholders' use affect the impact of the energy use? So we have an indicator trying to understand that more complex relationship. And then we have some indicators that we originally did not put as shared across the use cases, like the feeling safe. We had originally put that one into the public safety domain one, since it's very obviously protection of human, prevention of harm, public safety. But when we were engaging with the media use cases, feeling safe actually became a key issue for them, because you need to feel safe when you're sharing your content online. You need to feel safe when you're in a smart city, that you're not being surveilled. You need to feel safe that your activities are that when you're engaging in this kind of virtual space, that you are safe. It actually is really key for them as well. So that then became a cross use case KVI for us. And in this case, we're going to do a survey of stakeholder perception around both personal, their own, but how they think that would impact community safety resulting from the solution use. We also have KVIs for media, and many of these focus on some of the key goals of the use cases around inclusive arts, heritage, and knowledge systems, as well as increasing well-being for community members. So this, we worked on objectives around things like how do we build more access to cultural events, and that means we need to actually understand that our demographics, so do relevant demographics actually have increased that are enabled by their devices and local networks. Or for well-being, we're looking at improved mental health, which basically means, does this actually create opportunities for reducing loneliness or increasing meaningful social mixing? For public safety, we also have a range of indicators, and these are also, like I said, these are just subsets of some, but many of them focus on the protection of humans to prevent harm and safer communities. Here, we're looking at things like improved availability of crisis and disaster services. So can we provide these services in rural and harder to reach areas, for example? Then we have greater protection of vulnerable people. Are these new areas or users reached through these improved services? Are they actually reaching vulnerable populations? And can we increase operational efficiency for saving lives in emergencies? Now, this one actually has created a really interesting piece of the puzzle, because we can't define this indicator ourselves. This is an indicator that needs to be defined by our stakeholders. They know what their operational efficiency is. So right now, this is one that we know we want to do. It's key to showing the value of the tool, as well as showing that our services can have value in society, but we have to be able to define it in their terms to make this work. So just to give you a quick overview, we have identified 6 categories of high-level values: environmental, social, economic, as well as innovation, safety and security, and democracy. And within each of these, we went through a process of then further articulating them. So we took each of these high-level values, we used the literature and the previous research work, as well as the goals of the use cases, to start articulating them into greater detail as we worked from the high-level values towards understanding the objectives. Then we took those, further split those up into specific objectives that we could meet. We went through each of the individual use cases to then understand how they could potentially meet them within their use cases, and then use that to combine those together to understand for each of the use cases what an indicator could mean. Then we tried to combine all of those together across the use cases to develop indicators that could work. We ended up with this really long list of about 50 possible indicators, and then worked with each. Then that was sent back within the use cases to hold individual use case discussions, a series of discussions, to then try to understand what they could actually measure. What data are they planning to gather in the use case? What kinds of people might they have access to? how are they designing their use cases in ways that might be able to change so that we could actually better engage this. And then we came up with a list of measures. I took those, combined them together, said, great, now we've got this beautiful list of potential measures. I was gonna bring them to all the use cases together. Let's see which ones actually are the best for all the different use cases so that we can have measures that compare across. And then we hit the most beautiful mess ever. And I say this with a little bit of pleasure because I didn't expect the mess. It was not what we were looking for, but it's been an incredible thought process and engagement process to really understand what we're doing in KVIs. So on paper, everything aligned. Then when we started to really discuss, everything started to disalign. There were assumptions that came out. We were trying to figure it out. And across the use cases, we were really struggling to figure out if there was a number or if there was a percentage, if there was a specific type of KPI that could speak across them all in a way that was meaningful. And a really great conversation that we had, say, it was around trust. We're thinking of consistency of service. What could this be? Well, we need to make sure that they're actually receiving the resources. Well, could that be do we need to have some sort of latency indicator or packet loss indicator? We started discussing this, and we had different the different use cases chimed up. One said, well, actually, we can't tolerate anything less than 99% availability. We need to make sure that all of our packets get from place A to place B in the time that we expect with very little latency. Another use case chimed up and said, well, we're actually working in difficult rural environment that is unrealistic for us. On a good day, we're at 70%. And we started going around and realizing, well, actually, this isn't necessarily a KPI question by itself. There's actually a user base, a social question there, a subjective one of, did you actually feel the loss of connectivity? And we realized if we pair these two together of what is the KPI you have, what is the feeling of loss of connectivity, then we might actually be able to validate an experience and understand were the user able to accomplish their goal through using the service with this kind of measures. And then we know we're actually starting to reach towards a value. So we had to go back and rewrite some of our measures. And in some cases that meant actually rewriting one of our indicators. So our indicator in this one originally had been connectivity is 100%. And then we realized actually the indicator needs to be user has tolerance of any disconnections or gaps in the service and how they use it. And so we ended up with these pairings, technical and social or objective measures, where we pair was the data received at the expected rate and were the reinstantiation times, how fast were they, how many times did we have to resync? And then we have this subjective question for the user. How do we assess, how tolerant were you of the disconnections, and was that connection in your service well enough for you to trust it as a service in the field while you're using it? And we did this again in some cases for the energy, because we wanted to better understand not just does the tool have a better possibility, but does the use of the tool also provide that? And again, for cultural events, we need to understand, is it not just that the device can create access, but how does that actually relate to your enjoyability and feeling safe? And so we're actually right now playing with these pairs across many of our indicators to understand what that would mean and to see how they can help us better validate these indicators as measurable. So we're going to gather our data from a range of different areas. So use cases and tools themselves, like we talked about, from the users and stakeholders. In some cases, we need insights from broader stakeholders. So we have to figure out how to reach beyond just our users to understand. In some cases, we need data from the partners. Say if we have questions around how much something might cost, that'll come from the partners in the organizations. And in some cases, we need to evaluate by comparing what we can do with external research if we need understanding, say, of specific demographics of where we might want to apply our use case. And so this is what we're trying to do, is figure out how do we actually get this data. And this is a quick little provocative question I have about KVIs as we're going along here, which is questions we have about who should be selecting these key values in the KVIs, who should be involved in those processes, who validates the KV to indicator connection, How far in scope and person should a KVI look? Do we just look at users and users experience, or do we take into account broader stakeholders or environments or economies? And if so, how? And then a question of how comparable and repeatable should KVIs be? On the one hand, they're very clearly use case specific, but on the other hand, it'd be great. We need to be able to continue to learn and build the way KPIs have been able to support us in that. So how do we balance that challenge? And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Super perfect. Very, very in time and very interesting presentation. I think that you put on the table quite interesting question that should be addressed in the last session. So thanks for that. Really appreciated.
And thanks for tolerating a KVI, not a KPI presentation. I appreciate it.
It's okay. Okay, so going through the agenda, now should be the time for Target X. Maximilian from Fraunhofer. The floor is yours.
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone.
Hi, good morning.
I will start sharing my screen. Okay, you can see my presentation, right?
Is actually loading. Okay, now it's perfect.
Okay. Yes, then welcome from my side. Max Brochhaus, my name, from Fraunhofer IPT in Aachen, and yeah, we are working on the research project Target X, and I'm going to give you a short presentation about what we've done so far regarding the KPI and KVI research challenge. So what Target X overall objective is summarized here on this slide. With Target X, we want to contribute to the acceleration of the digital transformation of different verticals based on the integration of 5G technology into these verticals. And we will do this by installing trial sites and prototypes in the different verticals. And we want to transfer knowledge into these new verticals. I will explain a bit later on where the knowledge will be transferred from. But the main takeaway here is that we are trying to build up these trial sites to transfer the use of 5G into different verticals. And we want to do this in order to gather knowledge through practical experience in order to, on the one hand, develop use cases in the different verticals and also get some feedback on the further development of 5G and 6G technology. And this is also accompanied by FSTP projects, financial support for third-party projects that we are also funding through cascaded funding. So we have a lot of application in these FSTP projects. And in order to give you a bit more insight into what we do, I would like to briefly go over the structural approach. We have one overarching work package that's also led by me, and there we will develop a methodological assessment framework. And as you've now heard the term already with the verticals, here we have our verticals that we are focusing on. So as IPT, we have a very strong background in manufacturing. We are a research institute from Fraunhofer coming from the production technology part, and therefore our manufacturing focus is very strong. And the other verticals that we have in Target X are on the one hand energy, automotive, and construction. And therefore this is a very interdisciplinary project with interdisciplinary work packages and also very different domain experts. So we have experts from automotive, we have experts from manufacturing, very interdisciplinary. And all of this is accompanied by the work package 1 and the work package 6. As I said, in work package 1, we are developing the methodological assessment framework, trying to figure out how we can evaluate the benefit that is achieved through the application of the 5G use cases in each vertical. And this is also accompanied by work package 6, where we focus on the technology evolution beyond 5G, taking all the experience that we gather from the practical application in our trial sites in each vertical in order to focus on beyond 5G features. How can the technology be further improved? Maybe a bit more info on the overall concept. As I said, we have these verticals. You can see that there's a division here now in the manufacturing vertical. So this is divided further into, on the one hand, 5G for mobile robotics, and on the other hand, into 5G for cloud native production. So this is the overall focus that we have. We are focusing on energy monitoring. We are focusing on mobile robotics. We are focusing on cloud native production. We are focusing on the overall use of 5G on construction sites and 5G on autonomous driving. And that's what is one of the specialities of TargetX. We integrate 5G into new verticals. As I already said, we have a lot of experience already in manufacturing. We've had a couple of 5G research projects in the past with a very strong manufacturing focus, and we want to expand the horizon here onto new verticals and integrate them into our 5G ecosystem. And what we want to do with the KPIs and the KVIs is we want to build the methodological assessment framework that uses these KPIs in order to quantify the benefit that is achieved through the application of the use cases. And on the other hand, as I already said, we want to have a look out for 5G, for new 5G and 6G features, because through the application, we get a lot of feedback from what is missing. We've already heard from you, Alex, that you noticed that the uplink is always a bottleneck. We've also noticed this. And yeah, it's only possible to find this out through application and through testing.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, Maximilian, there was just some seconds that at least on my side, I wasn't able to listen you. Now it seems okay.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So our testbeds are located in 2 places in Europe. The majority of the testbeds is at the Industry Campus Europe in Aachen, Germany, where I'm also at. So the 5G for energy monitoring testbed, the 5G for mobile robotics testbed, 5G for cloud native production, and also the construction site are all located in Aachen, Germany. And then we have the 5G for autonomous driving testbed partner IDIADA in Tarragona, Spain, next to Barcelona. So yeah, in these testbeds, we will apply our use cases. And I've spoken a bit about the use cases now already. We have a very interdisciplinary project, and it's not always easy to find common grounds for the assessment of all the use cases of TargetX. And therefore, we started last year with a uniform description of all use cases, describing all the requirements that are necessary in order for the use case to be applied, and the benefits of the use cases. In total, we have 11 use cases that will be implemented over the course of TargetX. And what we focused on for the description of the use cases is that we try to identify the benefits that can be achieved through the use case implementations and applications. And this is also going into the direction of the presentations that we've seen so far. What we want to pay attention to is which benefit can be achieved through the use case that is enabled by 5G. And here we have a little difference, I think, regarding the interpretation of terms. From our perspective, also because we've had a previous project where we handled the matter similarly, we expressed the benefits from techno-economical perspectives with KPIs, key performance indicators, from a user perspective. So for example, when I'm operating a manufacturing field, what do I get from the application of a 5G based use case in my manufacturing environment? And we do the same for the societal perspective with the KVI. And this is very difficult, or not very difficult, but this is a common thing, I think, that needs to be defined further down the road. A lot of people are referring to KPI as the network KPI. We are also referring to it as the benefits from a techno-economical perspective. And this is then accompanied by the KVI in order to integrate the social perspective. And As I already said, we have this uniform use case description of all of our use cases, and this is the foundation for the evaluation of the use cases. And now I want to briefly go over the method that we developed so far for the evaluation of the benefits of the use cases. As I already said, we identified the benefits from the different use cases. And for this, the domain knowledge or the expert knowledge is required, because if I want to evaluate the benefit that I get in my daily running production or on my daily running construction site, I need to talk to the domain experts and ask them, what's the benefit if we have a 5G use case here? What do you get in the end? And this is expressed on the one hand in techno-economical goals and on the other hand in societal goals. So these are the goals that are to be achieved through the application of 5G on, for example, a construction site, on a manufacturing site, in order to improve the currently existing processes. And as I already said, we use KPIs for the evaluation of the techno-economical goals and KVIs for the evaluation of the societal goals. And this, in the end, hopefully enables us a homogenized and uniform use case assessment over the course of Target X. And we have already drafted the first set of KPIs and KVIs. Here on the one hand, we have our use case benefits and our techno-economical goals that are derived from these benefits. So what we did is we conducted interviews on these matters that I just talked about, the benefits from each use case, from each vertical have been recorded, and then we tried to form techno-economical goals. So for example, one techno-economical goal is the expanding of process insights. So I want to learn more about my, for example, milling use case in my production, which is enabled by increased sensor integration, more data from the process, more data from the product that is produced in the end, and thereby I learn more about my product and my process. And another techno-economical goal is the increase of operational capability. So we want to make our processes more reliable. We want to increase the quality, the overall quality of our processes. And we do this based on, for example, increased stability in our processes or increased capability of our processes. And the other techno-economical goal here that we defined is the increase of operational efficiency. So we want to be more efficient. We want to have slower task time. We want to have reduced operational costs. We want to have reduced tool wear, for example, in order to be more efficient, to produce with less input that is required. And all of this is supposed to be achieved by the use of 5G use cases. The same was done for the integration of the societal goals. We focused on the benefits from a societal perspective. This goes very much into the direction that we have already seen with the ESG goals. So all of the ESG goals that are predefined can be addressed with societal goals. And if you look at the example for the use case benefits, we on the one hand said, okay, we can increase worker safety, for example, on construction site, because if we have increased communication on a construction site, we have increased perception of the surroundings and we can prevent accidents. Or we have more transparency over environmental impacts because we can just measure more. We create energy transparency, especially with our energy-related use cases. And this, in the end, is a benefit that we achieve through the application of 5G. And here, the societal goals are then formulated. On the one hand, we want to improve safety-related aspects. We want to create transparency about ecological impacts of our processes. And we want to increase the digital inclusion through the increased networking. All of these goals have then been used in order to derive our first KPI set. This has been or this is displayed here. I will not go over the KPIs now. What's important here is we have these goals. These are the same as on the previous slide. So on the one hand, we have the expanding of process insights, we have the increase of operational capability and the increase of process efficiency, which resulted then in 17 KPIs as our first KPI set. And we have 10 KVIs following the same approach with the categories of improvement of safety-related aspects, transparency about ecological impacts, and digital inclusion. And for the transparency about the ecological impacts, this is displayed here with some impact categories following the LCA methodology. So our aim is to, in the end, conduct an LCA, a life cycle assessment of certain processes in the use cases of Target X in order to, on the one hand, assess the CO2 footprint of our use case, the water consumption of our use case, because if we are able to show that 5G has a positive impact here and really gives us a benefit, we are very easily able to say, okay, the investment into 5G on construction sites, in production facilities, is justifiable because we do not only get technical and economical benefits, but we also get societal benefits, for example, in terms of decreased CO2 footprints of our overall production processes. These goals have then been taken and used in order, or have been used to derive the KPIs. This has already been explained, but I want to briefly go over the methodology that is behind our thoughts here. So we said we want to increase productivity as a techno-economical goal, and productivity can be measured, for example, in effectiveness, throughput, and work efficiency if we're talking about a production process. Now we need to assess how the impact of 5G can be quantified. And for this, equations need to be defined. These are very easy here. So for example, if we talk about effectiveness, we look at the produced quantity and divide this by the actual production time. Or if we look at throughput, we look at the same term here, and we figure out what's the impact of 5G on the coefficients in our equation. And we do this also for the societal goals. So for example, the transparency regarding the ecological impacts can be, or is one of our goals. We have our KVIs, for example, the electric power consumption, material consumption, water consumption, and we then define equations that are used in order to calculate these KPIs and KVIs here. And what this in the end gives us is a methodology that has a let's say, defined approach to calculate our KVIs and KPIs with data and assessments and estimates coming from our use cases. So if I want to look at my positive impact of 5G on the overall ecological impacts of my use case, I have to look at the electric power that is consumed in order to execute the use case, divide this, for example, by the produced quantity, and then I can quantify what the impact is. And if this is, for example, compared to having a Wi-Fi connection or a 4G connection, I can say, okay, if we use 5G, we will have a positive impact in terms of reduced electric power consumption because our processes are more efficient. We have, for example, higher data rates that can be transferred. This increases our insights. We can control our processes better. We get more controllability in our production, and therefore we are more efficient. We waste less materials, we waste less resources, and therefore we have an overall better CO2 footprint if we apply 5G. And one of the bottlenecks here that we are focusing right now is the trade-off between accuracy and generalization, because I can do very detailed analysis of each KPI and KVI, but I have to always keep in mind it has to be easy to assess. It has to be generalizable because we want to transfer it to other use cases as well. And this was where we are currently working on in order to really quantify our impacts on the use cases. And to sum this up, I brought here a little outlook. We already have a 5G ROE tool, a return on investment tool, and we want to integrate the the methodological assessment framework into our 5G ROI tool in order to have a tool at hand where users, for example, from manufacturing domains, can then input data, describe their use cases briefly, and then get an assessment with KPIs and KVIs on what they can achieve if they switch to 5G, what are the benefits from a technical and a societal perspective for the users. We've already also published some of our works here in one publication that was presented at ONCE 2024, and we are currently also working on a work item in 5G ASEA, where we want to publish a white paper. Not sure yet when this will be published, but we are working together with the partners from 5G ASEA on this matter in order to get more impact or get more input from industry partners on what we are doing in Target X. So to sum this up, we are very focused on the use cases, very much focused on the assessment of the use cases by KPI, KVI. How can we quantify the benefits that are achieved through the use of 5G, and what do the users really get if they switch to 5G? All right.
Thank you, Maximilian.
Watch, this was on my clock, this was 20 minutes.
That's perfect. Yes. Very good presentation. Thanks a lot. I think that you are gaining really a lot of material through each presentation. It is will be quite interesting to further investigate and find, let's say, the commonalities. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your attention.
Okay, so now is the time of the last presentation from the session 1. So imagine beyond 5G. And so we should have Carlos from Keysight, Arturo from Telefonica, and George from Athens University of Economics and Business. So I let you the floor. I don't know who's going to lead the presentation, but please go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, Alex Trogolo. Let me share my screen once again.
We hear you perfectly.
And I already shared my screen. Can you see it, right?
Is loading. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, well, thank you everyone for inviting us to present some of our insights regarding KPIs and KVIs. I will leave the floor to Carlos to start the presentation.
We are people that actually in Portugal having a plenary meeting of Imagine Beyond 5G that's concurrent with this interesting workshop. So yeah, we're going to try to show you a little bit first an introduction of our project very briefly, and then we go to our KPI definition, evaluation, and KPI definition and evaluation approaches. Good. So a little bit about the objectives that we have. Very appropriately for this workshop, we want as objective number 1 to identify KPIs, and define also novel business models. And for this, also the second central objective that we have is to build a large platform for experimentation and to be able to bring innovative use cases into the facilities that we have. I will say a little bit more about our platform in the next slide. We also want to use well-defined KPIs that allow third parties to come and experiment and do the trials of these very innovative use cases in as easy a way as possible. Also, we are offering the development of open source tools also to be able to have smaller players that can come into the market and bring their solutions and their innovative verticals. And then we also want to perform those 5G large-scale trials that will bring enough data and also input to our Stream B colleagues on what they should try to do to improve what we have now. Yes, I think we can go to the next slide. I will not go in detail to all the partners that we have in the project, but I think it's important that we understand we have 4 facilities here that conform the Imagine Beyond 5G. platform. We have one of the facilities in France. This is mainly at a Unicom. Of course, this facility, the top left, relies heavily on open-air interface. Then we have another facility in Norway. These have different sites at NTNU, University in Oslo, and so on. It's a facility that relies also quite a bit on Nokia equipment, and it's also there is an important role of Telenor in managing the network. On the bottom left, we have our Spanish facility. This is a facility that it's mainly managed by a coordinator in the Universidad Politécnica de Valencia. We have different sites here. One in University of Valencia. We have a rural site in Soria. We have something in Madrid. We have an important site also in the harbor, in the port of Valencia, where we are also trying to bring in some vertical experiments relating to that. Lastly, we have the Portuguese facility. First, Norway and Spain facilities rely mostly on commercial equipment. We can see Nokia working there heavily. Portuguese facility, we also have a few sites with Altis Labs, Instituto Telecomunicación de Navarro, and so on. And we also have a little bit different providers. You can see we have some network providers from Huawei and so on. So all the facilities are mostly giving overall similar capabilities, but each of them will also have their specificities that will make them more or less suitable for different type of vertical experiments that we want to run. Okay, let's go now a little bit through what we call platform KPIs. We have divided our KPI approaches into two categories of KPIs. On the one hand, we have platform KPIs. These are the usual KPIs that we have been working in 5G, but also in the platform 4G and so on. These are communication KPIs. You can see here that we have taken input mostly from the TMB working group at SNS, and we have different families of KPIs like capacity, channel, compute KPIs, energy efficiency related KPIs, latency, of course, very important, as well as reliability, availability, and organization. These are KPIs that we're using to benchmark what are the capabilities of the platform as a whole. Of course, they are some of them very relevant for some of the vertical experiments that we have, but let's say these are what is, let's say, familiar ground for us. Later, Arturo will talk about the KPIs that we define for the different vertical sectors and different use cases that we're having in the project. And just very quickly about our KPI test and measurement methodology. We are relying here on a set of measurement tools, some of them by Keysight, but also some other tools by other companies and open source tools. What I think it's a little bit remarkable or interesting to see is that we're trying to bring a KPI measurement automation framework. We want to have tests that are as automatic and require as little intervention, manual intervention as possible. That also ensures repeatability, and that we can as well port them to the different facilities. So without going too much into details, what we rely here is on OpenTAP. This is an open source automation framework. And OpenTAP is able to control measure different instruments that we have deployed in the network, both software and hardware tools, but it's also able to orchestrate tests, sequence them, automatically correct the KPI measurements from the different instruments that we have, and store them into a results database that we hope we can build together with the TMB group and other projects in order to provide the data that TMB will require. Now, I think Arturo will take over.
Thank you, Carlos. So, basically, as you know, the Imagine Beyond 5G project is a stream project. So the focus for us is not only the technology, but also the use cases or the verticals that the facilities support. In our case, we started with around 15 different use cases distributed by verticals that we are seeing in the column of the left, let's say. So we have PPDR, media, e-health, education, transport, and logistic industry 4.0 and agriculture and forestry. As you see, there are a lot of verticals and also there are a lot of use cases. Also, through the open call process, we have 3 open calls in the Imagine Beyond 5G. Actually, we are launching the second one. We have been receiving new use cases, also maybe we will receive new verticals also. So, as you see in the column of the left, you have some leaders and within the project, which are partners, and then OC projects. So the green ones is the use cases that we are working right now, and the yellow one is the ones that we are planning to work in the following month and in the next year. So, as I said, our focus is the application KPIs and also to deploy use cases successfully in our platforms. And we have been receiving, with the help of third parties and use case partners, some APIs related to use cases. The table of the left, if you see, there are some specific use cases which are related to KPIs which are related to use cases. What we are trying to do here is like to standardize those KPIs in families or technologies. So, for example, if you see the first one, drones and UAVs, I think we have like 3 use cases with drones. So we are taking into consideration control UAV latency, accuracy, precision, but also accuracy can be a KPI that another family could use, like AR, VR, or AI, ML. And we have like a lot of KPIs from media, which is very important with video transmission and so on. And then we have a very important family, which is user experience. We have a lot of use cases for e-health. So vital sign accuracy or real-time monitoring, I mean, it's very specific KPI, and it's very important, the user experience in case of the e-health vertical. So what we are trying to do here is to make like a table that has all the technologies, also the technologies will be related to use cases, and then the specific application KPI, which is very important in FPD projects. We are trying to include even more information and definition of the KPIs and families in our deliverables in Work Package 1 and Work Package 4 in the project Imagine Beyond 5G. And also, if you have a question about this, you can check the documentation. And now I will leave the floor to George, which is going to talk about KVIs, which is also very important in the project.
Thank you, Arturo. Good morning, everyone. As you can imagine, the target of KVIs is to validate and quantify the impact of Imagine Beyond 5G platform, as well as the vertical use cases in the society. So to start with, I will present the methodology we have followed in the project for defining KVIs as well as for validating them. We are quite active in the societal needs and value creation group of CGIA, so our work has been influenced a lot by this group. It was our starting point, and on the other hand, we have contributed a lot to the progress there. So to start with, we identify the set of societal values which mainly come from UN SDGs and other normative framework like the EU Green Deal. However, we narrowed down to certain SDGs that are relevant to the Imagine Beyond 5G objectives, as well as to the objectives of the open call projects we have in the Imagine. And after identifying the key societal values that we aim to address, we become more specific by identifying which are the societal level goals for each of them, considering both the infrastructure developed by the facilities for Imagine Beyond 5G, as well as the different use cases we have in the platforms coming from the open call projects. When defining KVIs, it's quite important to think in different dimensions. Here we can see some main dimensions. So usually KVIs should quantify the numbers of events that may appear and that may impact the society. For instance, we may, if we, for example, if we have focusing on PPDR sector, we may have some flooding events. So how often such events occur may be a potential KPI for assessing the impact of a specific use case in the PPDR sector. Another aspect is the resources. KPIs may quantify the quality or the quantity of specific resources, the effectiveness of certain processes, and of course, another aspect which is important is the coverage. That may be geographical coverage that certain use cases achieve, or it can be the number of people that can be contributing on different use cases. So for what is important for the definition of KVIs is the formulation. So for each of the KVIs, we identify the project. Our goal is to have a way to quantify it. So our main goal is to have quantifiable KVIs. So we provide a formulation for each of the KVIs. And our initial approach, our initial thinking was that we'll be able to have KPIs to quantify each of the KPIs, but following our progressing with the work, we realized that this may not be possible. In fact, in most of the cases, it's not possible. So what we needed to do is to identify different metrics for quantifying the KPIs. But in some few cases, we may be able to reuse some indicators, KPIs, to validate the KPIs. So part of the identification is also the target value for the KPIs. These target values may come from the normative frameworks. UNSDG, for instance, have certain targets for specific societal values. But this may also come from the different use cases, because some target values may be use case specific. So these are the main steps we follow for the identification of the KVIs, and for the validation of the KVIs. What we have done is that we have, let's say, 3 different approaches that we will follow for validating the KVIs. Some of them will be able to be validated by the testing automation tools we have in the facilities. So we will follow a similar approach that the one we follow for KPIs. For some of them, especially related to business and economics, we have certain tools that we will collect the input, let's say, in a manual way and perform an analysis. But for some others, especially the ones that are specific to vertical use cases, we will need to have a planning of high maturity trials involving verticals and end users in order to be able to achieve it and to achieve validation. And this is the most challenging part for the KPIs. What is important during this process, both for identifying the KPIs, but also during validation, is to collect inputs from multiple sources. So this is not a job that can be done for a group of people. So we need inputs from the facilities, for the Imagine Beyond 5G platform. We need inputs from use case owners. We need the inputs from the open call projects involved in Imagine Beyond 5G. And of course, since we have also KPIs related to business and economics, business modeling is also an important part of this KPI framework. Going now to the key societal values we address in Imagine Beyond 5G are mostly environmental sustainability, economic growth, innovation, security, and trustworthiness, inclusiveness, privacy and confidentiality, good health and safety, well-being and entertainment, and quality of education. These are the main values based on the set of use cases we consider in the projects. Could be more, could be less as well, but these are the ones that we focus, and the objective is that we identify KPIs both, in some cases, both for infrastructure level and vertical ecosystem level, but in some cases, we focus only on the vertical level. For instance, you can see that some, for instance, quality of education, this is related to the vertical sector. So here you can see a list of platform KPIs we have identified. The focus is, especially during the first year of the project, is on the environmental sustainability. So we have KPIs on platform energy efficiency and CO2 emissions. And also, what is important for us is the economic growth KPIs, which are related to the cost efficiency of the platform, the profitability of all stakeholders involved in the platform, as well as the sustainability of the ecosystem as a whole. And of course, we have other KPIs related to innovation, inclusiveness, security and trustworthiness, and also we have this EMF exposure KPI, which we plan to validate. So far, we have identified, we focus on 14 KPIs for the platform, and we do not expect to expand more on this. But here you can see that we have, for each of these KPIs, we have identified certain metrics. For instance, here.
Sorry, Arturo, if you can, let's say, go to the conclusion just in 1 minute, if it's possible. Sorry for that.
Yes, will be possible.
Thank you.
So we have done specified metrics for each of these KPIs. And in some cases, as I already mentioned, we have KPIs being able to be reused for the validation. And of course, we have some KPIs for the vertical sectors. And the point here is that we have some KPIs that are relevant for multiple sectors that are quite generic, and again are on the same societal values, environmental sustainability, economic growth, innovation, etc. But also we have identified KPIs per sector, which are more specific. Here we can see an example from the PPDR sector. And the challenging part for these vertical specific KPIs, as I said earlier, is that we should have high maturity trials to be able to validate it during the lifetime of the project. So regarding the measurement and validation, some of the KPIs will be automatically measured, validated through tools of the facility. However, for some of them, some manual work should be done to collect input through forms and questionnaires. And the validation methods, I think already mentioned that. For some of them, we will use test experiment relying on testing tools of the facility. And for some of them, we will have a techno-economic analysis, especially for the business and economic ones. And as I already mentioned, the high maturity trials. And that's all from our side. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you want more information, please be tuned for the deliverables that will come this summer.
Yeah, sorry for this more minute that we took.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciated. And yes, I think that with this presentation, we complete the session.